Hello, Jacksonites. Apologies for the long absence. No, this is not my room. All of this stuff is Meadows behind me. Not mine, I swear. Although, pretty much all of it was supplied by me. So I guess in some ways it kind of is mine. But no, um, I'm in here. I'm probably going to jump back and forth between being in here because this is in my bedroom and in my corner in the living room because people are here. Roman is here. So if you hear a thumping in the background, his bedroom is right behind ours. So pardon the noise if there is any. But shouldn't be too much of an issue. My backgrounds have flip-flopped numerous times over the years. So as stated in my description, welcome to my yearly dose of superhero content. Although this is a video that I've been wanting to do for almost since day one of me doing this channel, but I'm just now finally getting around to doing it. Funny enough. So, I do have a written speech for the intro for this video, so I'm going to jump into that right now. No beating around the bush. And this is, I think, going to be a fairly long one, so just bear with me, please. Everybody at some point in time has fantasized about what superpowers they would want to have. And in the world of comic books, there has been a massive, wide variety of abilities that have been showcased by various superheroes and supervillains in both Marvel and DC. Flight, invulnerability, size changing, super speed, fantastic stretching, invisibility, force field projection, pyrokinesis, telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation, shape-shifting, laser vision, so on and so forth. I, of course, as everybody else has, if you say you haven't, you're lying, have fantasized numerous times and have even had very in-depth conversations with other people in my life about what superpowers I would want and how I would use them. Whether I would lurk in the shadows and save people without them knowing it, be a big public figure and save people all over the world, use my abilities as a vigilante, or possibly act as an anti-villain to right the many wrongs in the world by my own rules and methods. Who knows? If I had to pick a list of 5 superpowers that I would want to have at my disposal, amongst them would be an electrical manipulation. And I would also bolster these abilities with extensive hand-to-hand combat training, namely in boxing, judo, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, Shotokan karate, kenjutsu, and Muay Thai. But the 5th and final superpower that I would want, and aside from invulnerability, this being my go-to ability, like if I could only pick one, this would be it, and that is super strength. The idea of being able to lift cars and trucks over my head with ease, rip giant trees out of the ground, emit sonic booms by clapping, punch through reinforced concrete, and tear apart steel cages with my bare hands has always appealed to me. And in my opinion, super strength is one of the most entertaining superpowers to watch. And in my opinion, too, it is one of the most difficult abilities to combat against. Which, not to sound like a no-sell cheater, I think that's what they call them in gaming terms, but having a big strength advantage against your foes does go a long way to victory. I've alluded many, many times in the past that I am a huge fan of characters in both Marvel and DC with super strength in their roster of abilities. For Marvel, there's characters like Colossus, Spider-Man, Venom, Juggernaut, The Thing, Beast, Rhino, Thor, Hercules, the Sentry, Hyperion, Luke Cage, so on and so forth. All these being some of the strongest characters in all of Marvel. And for DC, there's characters like Captain Atom, Superman, Lobo, Martian Manhunter, Power Girl, Wonder Woman, Shazam, Doomsday, Bane, Black Adam, Validus, the mighty Darkseid, so on and so forth. All of these characters also being some of the strongest in DC. Now, in the comic book genre, Superman is almost inarguably the poster child for characters with super strength. And it's easy to see why, as it's literally in his name. And Superman has showcased some of the most outrageous and monumental feats of super strength in comic book history, having lifted entire miles away into space, pushed the moon from its orbit to block the sun, sliced an entire planet clean in half with one punch, and has gone toe-to-toe with some of the strongest heroes and villains in DC. Doomsday, Imperiex, Martian Manhunter, Captain Atom, Darkseid, General Zod, and even the mighty Godzilla, amongst many others. However, while not taking anything away from Soups, if Andrew Domine is in the chat, as I am a fan of Superman, but in my opinion, there's one character, and while I don't think that he's more powerful than Superman, although in many ways he is certainly very comparable, in my opinion, he's way more entertaining, way more awe-inspiring, and frankly, just more badass and iconic than the Man of Steel. And that character is, of course, the not-so-jolly green giant, the big green guy, the one who you do not want to make angry because you would not like him when he's angry. The strongest one there is, the Incredible Hulk. Debuting in May of 1962, the Incredible Hulk has gone on to become one of the most powerful and formidable superheroes in the entire comic book medium, and has fought and smashed his way through numerous comic book storylines, various both villains, military platoons, and even some of the strongest superheroes in Marvel and even DC. And in my opinion, Hulk himself has showcased arguably the most impressive feats of super strength in all of Marvel Comics history, or at least some of the most impressive, like holding the tectonic plates of an entire planet together with his bare hands to keep it from collapsing while under miles of magma, taking on the Sentry and fighting him to a standstill and outright defeating the mighty Gladiator, shattering the shell of the deadly X-Men villain Onslaught, wiping the floor with a hammered and hammerless Thor, throwing the giant Fin Fang Foom straight to the moon, destroying a giant asteroid twice the size of Earth, and also knocking the mighty Superman clear into space. For those who don't know, somehow, Dr. Robert Bruce Banner, a physically weak, socially withdrawn, and emotionally reserved physicist, after trying to save a fellow friend from the effects of an experimental gamma bomb during a weapons test, gains the ability to transform when angry, stressed, or emotionally devastated into a giant green-skinned, formerly gray, savage creature with originally a subhuman mind and incredible super strength, specifically stated to increase with his level of rage. And numerous times this has been highly implied to be limitless or near limitless, as there's seemingly no end to how angry the Hulk can get. To give a quick rundown, the Incredible Hulk's abilities include enormous superhuman strength, speed, stamina, agility, reflexes, senses, durability, endurance, and longevity, invulnerability to bazooka shells, high caliber bullets, tank shells, laser and plasma fire, flamethrowers, napalm, so on and so forth. Anger empowerment, regeneration that rivals the likes of Deadpool and even Wolverine, super jumps up to 4 to 5 miles in one single leap, shockwave generation via his iconic thunderclap attack, and also through stomping, energy absorption, gamma ray emission and manipulation, and the ability to breathe underwater, breathe in space, and see ghosts and other astral entities. And with these powerful abilities, Hulk has some of the most badass and iconic supervillains amongst any other Marvel hero ever created. Characters like Beast, Zax, Maestro, the Absorbing Man, Juggernaut, the UFOs, or UFOs, however that team is pronounced. I prefer UFOs. The Abomination, and my favorite of all, the Mighty Red Hulk. Okay. And with a character as powerful and oftentimes uncontrollable and unpredictable as the Hulk, he has even clashed with some of the strongest superheroes in comics, like The Thing, Colossus, Thor, the Sentry, Spider Man, Black Bolt, Hercules, and as previously mentioned, even went toe to toe with the mighty Superman in a Marvel and DC crossover. Though sadly, unlike Supes, Hulkster has yet to go up against Godzilla, at least in a proper one-on-one fight, barring the newest controversial death battle video. Uh, excuse me. With the Hulk's appearance and origins, it's easy to identify his similarities to the Frankenstein monster and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with the Frankenstein comparisons being Bruce Banner himself being a brilliant scientist that has to tend with the destructive and monstrous tendencies of his alter ego, though in this case both entities are one and the same person. But that plays into the Jekyll and Hyde traits, with Banner being the respected, polite, and educated gentleman, and the Hulk being the uncontrollable, rampaging brute. That personality wise is the exact opposite of Dr. Banner, Hulk being everything Banner is not. And me pointing out these similarities is not a critique in any way, quite the opposite, actually. It's obvious that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were huge fans of both Frankenstein and Jekyll and Hyde, not only incorporating a similar origin, a similar appearance even, especially with the Grey Hulk bearing a striking resemblance to the Boris Karloff version of the Frankenstein monster, as well as the metaphysical and psychological aspect of both characters, what with the multiple personalities that Bruce Banner has because of the Hulk. Dr. Banner himself, Green Hulk, the aforementioned Grey Hulk, Devil Hulk, Professor Hulk, all of these stemming from the massive amount of mental and emotional abuse Bruce suffered at the hands of his poisonous father, Brian Banner. But also, many Marvel superheroes have their origins deeply rooted in science, often with them being created through science experiments gone wrong, or being a byproduct of some scientific experiment or process. Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Captain America, so on and so forth. Over the years, the Hulk has been all over the place in terms of his placement in the Marvel Universe. Starting out as a monstrous, misunderstood creature constantly at odds with the rest of the world, just wanting to be left alone, another trait similar to the Frankenstein monster, gradually being considered a necessary evil that can be aimed at larger, more destructive threats, to being a full-fledged member of the Avengers, fighting against evil alongside some of the other strongest and most well-known heroes in Marvel, like the mighty Thor, the invincible Iron Man, and the Fantastic Thing, to even becoming almost a full-fledged villain during both the Marvel Ultimates universe, but especially during the events of World War Hulk, battling the likes of powerful aliens, bloodthirsty parasitic monsters, and some of the most powerful heroes in Marvel. So it's safe to say the Hulk has evolved and changed several times over the course of over 60 years. And through all of that, the Incredible Hulk has always remained my number one favorite comic book superhero in both Marvel and DC. Excuse me. In terms of his appearances outside comics, though, unfortunately, the Hulk has had an extremely spotty and inconsistent showcasing in film and television. As far as animated shows are concerned, his first series, the animated 1982 The Incredible Hulk series, which lasted only 13 episodes, not counting the original Marvel Superhero Hour, I think it was called. There were segments of that show that were Hulk themed, but there wasn't any specific dedicated Hulk episode. I don't think so, at least, of that series. After this, there was the much more famous 1996 The Incredible Hulk animated series, which was sadly cut short after only a measly 21 episodes. Both of which are nearly impossible to get on DVD or Blu-ray. Then there was the action-packed and Hulk-friendly series Hulk and the Agents of Smash, though again, sadly, it's unavailable on DVD and is only available on streaming. And arguably his best appearance, in my opinion, is his showcasing in the 2012 Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated series. Again, in true animated Marvel shows tradition, is also very difficult to get your hands on a DVD copy. In terms of films, the Hulk is even more spotty, unfortunately. Of course, we got the controversial 2003 Hulk film directed by Ang Lee, the 2006 The Ultimates animated film, which has a badass fight between an uncontrollable Hulk and the rest of the Avengers, the much better 2008 The Incredible Hulk film in the MCU. Then after this, Hulk would sadly become only a supporting character in the first 4 Avengers films, Thor Ragnarok and the 2022 She-Hulk series, and apparently this upcoming MCU Spider-Man 4. While I really enjoy his appearances in the first 2 Avengers films and Thor Ragnarok, I'm actually a big shipper of Bruce and Natasha. Following his frustrating and ungodly pathetic appearance in Avengers Infinity War, the Hulk would be, for all intents and purposes, completely destroyed. I've made it no secret that I am almost completely disinterested in the Marvel side of the superhero genre. And there are many reasons for this. The utter oversaturation of content, what with the multiple MCU films and shows being released year after year throughout the 2020s, the poorly made and frustratingly terrible films like Morbius and Madam Web, and the stranglehold the superhero genre has had on American box offices, causing other films I like to suffer as a result, like Godzilla King of the Monsters being massively overshadowed by Avengers Endgame. Though granted, in the last couple of years, the MCU has been suffering pretty badly, more than likely due to said oversaturation of all this content, and the franchise as a whole massively overstaying its welcome. But I'm not going to lie, probably the biggest reason for my disinterest is how the Hulk has been treated by Disney, with him being turned into a bigger and bigger joke, and him being depowered more and more since Avengers Endgame. That film robbing us of an opportunity to see a big badass knockdown drag-out rematch between Hulk and Thanos. But no, Hulk gets the Martian Manhunter treatment from Justice League Unlimited and is just sidelined as tech support. I hate to sound like an entitled fanboy, But I just cannot deny how frustrated I feel to see my favorite character in comics being so mistreated and nerfed year after year. Even Red Hulk being frustratingly saved for the last 20 minutes of Captain America 4, and especially with Mark Ruffalo's recent comments about how unlikely it is for us to see a new solo Hulk film due simply to how expensive CGI has gotten in Hollywood. My disinterest will just get more and more if the franchise continues in the direction that it's going. And I am aware for a long time the lack of solo Hulk films was due to Universal holding distribution rights for the Hulk, preventing Disney and Marvel from making their own films without Universal's involvement. But those rights reverted back to Marvel in 2023, so the ball is in their court. But after 2 years, almost, the MCU still hasn't done hardly anything else with him, aside from a couple cameo appearances here and there. So this still, for me, raises no faith. Due to all this, I just can't bring myself to care about anything else the MCU is putting out, as I don't think Marvel or Disney can really do anything to undo all the damage they've done to the Green Goliath. So because of this, I just stick to past appearances of the Hulk, like the 2003 film, which does have flaws, but I do defend more than most people do, and the 2008 Hulk film, which I still consider to be in my top 5 list of favorite superhero films of all time, and the first two Avengers films, which are also amongst my top 5 favorite superhero films, and the Agents of Smash, as well as one more TV series that's Hulk related, and is arguably my favorite piece of Hulk content ever made, aside from the 2008 film. And that is the 1978 live action The Incredible Hulk TV series, starring the lovely Bill Bixby as Dr. David Banner and the mighty Lou Ferrigno as the titular Incredible Hulk, with Hulk himself being voiced by Ted Cassidy in the first 2 seasons and Charles Napier for the last 3 seasons. By the way, pardon Roman in the background. Starting out as a television pilot film debuting November 4th, 1977, simply titled The Incredible Hulk, and a following TV film titled Death in the Family, debuting November 28th, 1977, the series would begin proper March 10th, 1978, going on for a successful 5 seasons with 80 episodes total, sadly being canceled May 12th, 1982, then being followed up by a trilogy of TV films released in 1988, 1989, and 1990. While not the longest live-action Marvel TV show, it has gone on to become arguably the most iconic and recognizable and popular Marvel television show. And even surpassing this, it's gone on to become one of the most successful and beloved gems amongst classic 1970s sci-fi action TV shows of all time. With Bill Bixby's infectious charm and engaging performance, the enjoyable and dated, in a good way, soaking of 70s fashion and vibes and music, the frequent and explosive rampages of Lou Ferrigno's monstrous and heroic Hulk, destroying cars, houses, trucks, forests, military bases, and evildoers' plans, tossing said evildoers and assholes every which way 6 ways to Sunday with ease, which only Lou can make look easy, and even its iconic intro has gone down as one of the greatest of all time. Dr. David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have. Then an accidental overdose of gamma radiation alters his body chemistry. And now when David Banner grows angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs. The creature is driven by rage and pursued by an investigative reporter. Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. The creature is wanted for a murder he didn't commit. David Banner is believed to be dead, and he must let the world think that he is dead until he can find a way to control the raging spirit that dwells within him. Rah! The Incredible Hulk. One of my favorite intros for any TV show. Love it. Shut up. I know it's cheesy. Despite its cancellation and lame conclusion with the death of the Incredible Hulk film, more on that later. The show is highly regarded as one of the best comic book properties of all time and has garnered a huge cult following and fan base since its inception, and its impact and status reaches far and wide. It obviously being the first depiction of the Incredible Hulk on screen, live action anyway. David Banner catapulting Bill Bixby to even further heights of being a heartthrob. The thing that made Lou Ferrigno famous, aside from being the only bodybuilder, in my opinion at least, to rival the mighty Arnie Schwarzenegger, and introduced him to film and television, and references to the show are seen to this very day. The 2008 Incredible Hulk film having many, many references and Easter eggs to the original series, the title in and of itself, and also how Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk is very similar to how David Banner becomes the Hulk in this series. With the faithful recreation of the intro in an episode of Family Guy with Stewie Griffin as David Banner and Peter Griffin as the Hulk, and the gender-swapped recreation of the intro in an episode of the She-Hulk series, which, while cool, kinda, titled The Savage She-Hulk, was heavily soured by topical, toxic, dumb fanboy jokes, and has, of course, inspired me. So quickly getting into my personal history, this part will be unscripted, but I just want to get through this real quick. I first became aware of the 70s Incredible Hulk show when I was very young. My dad knew that I was a fan of the Hulk when I was a kid because I would watch the 2003 film. I would watch all the Hulks. This is going to sound stupid. So I had a pair of the foam thing hands from the 2005 Fantastic Four film. Those were the same material and same mold and construction as the green Hulk hands from the 2003 film. Same sound effects and everything. Just the only difference were they were the Thing, and they had two different voice clips saying "It's clobbering time" and "Back off, Buttercup." Whereas the Hulk hands, there was a voice clip where he would just growl, and then there was another one where he would say "Hulk smash." Sadly, those thing hands do not exist anymore. I think those got too torn up. But I would reenact all of the Hulk scenes from the 2003 movie in my backyard, wearing my thing hands, pretending to be the Hulk. So one day, my dad said to me, "You know, there was a TV series about the Hulk that came out when I was a kid, and the Hulk was played by a guy named Lou Ferrigno." And he showed me a photo of Lou dressed up as the Hulk, and I was like, "That's the Hulk?" Yeah. Never touched the show until my junior year of high school. Strangely, I was going through another superhero phase, and this was when I had definitively figured out that the Incredible Hulk is my favorite Marvel superhero of all time. So I was just in a huge Hulk mood. And of course, I would be obsessed with the 2008 Hulk movie when it came out, but that's a different story. But then I just decided, you know, I've never actually looked into the Incredible Hulk TV series. So at the encouragement of my movie making teacher, I just decided to, because I've mentioned before, my movie making class when I was in high school, we had Mac computers, which those are really, really nice computers. So while I was working, I was researching the Incredible Hulk TV series on Wikipedia, And I was just sucked in reading everything about this show. It just sounded really, really, really intriguing to me. Like reading about its legacy, researching the episodes and reading some of their plots. Um, it just sounded really cool and really interesting to me. So Easter weekend of 2014, I was at my aunt's place and she had Netflix. And me and my cousin decided to, because I looked on Netflix, and at the time, The Incredible Hulk was on Netflix. So I was just like, "Hey, I'd like to watch this, at least like the first episode." And within like 20 minutes, I was sucked into the screen. I was completely captivated and completely invested. So me and my cousin watched the original pilot TV film, and I was like, "I want more. I want more. I want all of this. This is so right up my alley." So, no, it was 2013. So, it was 2013 when I started researching the show. But Christmas of 2013 going into 2014, I asked my mom for some Incredible Hulk stuff. So she gave me some money, and I went on Amazon and I bought a combo pack of the first two 80s Incredible Hulk TV films. And I bought the first 3 seasons of the show on DVD. Those were the holographic editions where you would turn it and it would morph from David Banner into the Hulk. So yeah, I bought the first 3 seasons, and New Year's Eve, my copy of the first season of The Incredible Hulk showed up in the mail. So I went over to my mom's, I grabbed it, and I brought it to my grandparents where I was staying at the time. And I cracked open The Incredible Hulk, and I was just like, barely breathing, barely blinking, barely acknowledging the rest of the world. I was just so sucked in and so captivated by the show. And for the next like 6, 7, or 8 months, I was completely obsessed with the Incredible Hulk show. Um, I would purchase season 4 for my birthday of that same year. Which I would watch over the course, or I would watch most of it over the course of that summer when I had moved in with my or no, that hadn't happened yet. I actually ended up giving away all of the first 4 seasons to my dad as a Father's Day present, but it wasn't until I never finished the show for reasons I'll get into a little later. But when Roman was born, recently that year, I had purchased the complete box set, which was like this thick at the time, because I was wanting to get the show back and also complete it, which I did during my paternity leave when Roman was born. But I can honestly say the Incredible Hulk series from the 1970s has gone on and has remained to this day one of my all-time favorite TV shows ever made. I think in my top 20 list, I think it was number 10 or maybe number 9. But I absolutely adore The Incredible Hulk. And yeah, it's stated it is one of my favorite TV shows, but it is also one of my favorite pieces of superhero media of all time. It's just, in my opinion, it's a masterpiece of a series. One that's highly entertaining, one that's very well made. It fairly a bit different from the Hulk comics in general, but still retaining enough of the spirit, style, and feel of the Incredible Hulk to instantly recognize it as, okay, yeah, that's the Incredible Hulk. And so, since I've been in a huge Hulk mood as of late, and since I've always wanted to do some kind of video on the Incredible Hulk series, going back to my early days on my channel in 2015, thinking about reviewing each season of the show in individual videos. But I do think that would be kind of an exercise in insanity because of how formulaic and repetitive this show is. I've decided that I'd like you to join me today as I go on a retrospective of the entire series and go over my top 20 favorite episodes of the 1970s Incredible Hulk TV series. Now, this top 20 list will be a fair bit different from my usual top 20 fare. As while I was going through the series and rewatching a bunch of episodes and picking out which would be my favorite 20 episodes, I ran into a bit of a snag. I could not really rank them from like least favorite to absolute favorite. They were just a collection of 20 episodes of my favorite episodes of the Incredible Hulk show. So I just decided, you know what? How about I just go through every episode of the series, read the plot, and say what it is, and then like explain why this is these are some of my favorites. I just feel like it would be a good way to shake and stir things up as opposed to my usual top 20 list. Although, like, so this ranking list, it doesn't really have a particular order, though there is a set of episodes later in the show that are my definitive favorites, but there are a couple more afterwards that are my that there are ones that I do like. So not only that, but I will be going over through the course of the entire series and giving some tidbits of trivia, and I'll finish with a recap quickly talking about the 3 TV films. So before we begin, got some handy burp fuel on here. And who do I have here? I got Andrew Domine. I got Texas Guy Movie Reviews. I got Jackie Boy. Oh yeah, I think that's what the lyrics said. Dr. Banner dealing with gamma rays turns into the Hulk. Yeah, that's from the 60s Marvel Superhero Hour, I think it was called, where the Hulk just looks like doesn't really look angry. He just looks like a dumb bumbling butt fuck. I think it was done by the same studio that did the 60s Spider-Man TV show. Terrible animation included. Texas Guy Movie Reviews asks, which Hulk movie has those big-ass dogs? That's the 2003 movie, the one directed by Ang Lee's Hulk. Or Ang Lee, yeah. Ang Lee's Hulk film. Hello, Roman. Yep, I'm cracking open the burp fuel, of course. Purely coincidence being in a Deadpool mug. Although I probably should have grabbed the original one I was going to grab. It was Marvel themed. This one is too. Whatever. All those who are watching, by the way, put down in the chat, who's your favorite Marvel superhero? Changed whose name to Eric? You mean Eric Bana, the actor who plays Dr. David Banner? Oh, you're talking about the show. No, they changed. That was kind of a thing, but they changed Bruce to David Banner in the 70s show because Bruce back then was considered a gay name, which Lou Ferrigno has gone on saying that he thinks that's one of the dumbest and most ridiculous things he's ever heard. No pun intended, because Lou Ferrigno was deaf at the time. But point being is that, yeah, it's stupid. But whatever, it was the 70s. It was a different climate. Okay, so before we jump into my top 20 list, I do want to talk about at least the first pilot film, just to give you guys kind of a refresher on how the show's inception was. So, as stated, The Incredible Hulk started as a pilot film debuting November 4th, 1977. Directed and written by Kenneth Johnson, whom has gone on to create some of the most popular TV shows of all time, like $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, and Walker, Texas Ranger. An accidental overdose of gamma radiation creates a mutation in David Banner, played by Bill Bixby's DNA. Whenever he becomes angry, he metamorphoses into a 7-foot, 330-pound, mindless, muscular green creature played by Lou Ferrigno. Tabloid newspaper reporter Jack McGee, played by Jack Colvin, a very annoying tabloid newspaper reporter, begins investigating claims of a giant creature. His investigation leads to the laboratory that Banner was using. An explosion in the lab kills Banner's associate and friend, Dr. Elena Marks, played by Susan Sullivan, the future wife of Kenneth Johnson. McGee, who dubs the creature the Hulk, believes it killed David too. Unable to explain the truth nor control his transformations, David leaves and goes on the run for the ensuing 5 years up until his death in 1990, spoilers, to find a cure for himself. So going into season 1, debuting March 10th, 1978, the first episode of my top 20 is titled The Beast Within, Season 1, Episode 2. Hey, Jackie boy, you might want to pay attention to this one. This might sound familiar. David Bradburn, and also to quickly talk about, so the show itself is very episodic, which is a good and bad thing. I like the formula, but this formula gets very repetitive. Every episode, David Banner jumps from place to place throughout the U.S., under different surnames. His last name would always begin with the letter B. David Brown, David Benson, David Barton, David Barr, so on and so forth. You get it. Hey, Horror and Metal is here. Yo, Horror and Metal channel. Hey, watch the spoilers. So yeah, he's trying to figure out some kind of way to either cure the Hulk or control the Hulk. He wants to stay out of trouble. The format's actually very similar to the original The Fugitive TV series starring David Jansen, where he jumps from place to place under different names, doing various menial, crappy dead-end jobs, trying to figure out a way to clear his name and cure himself. And along the way, he encounters various people and threats throughout the U.S., resulting in him transforming into the Hulk at least twice per episode. Rinse, lather, repeat for 80 episodes. That same formula. Shows up at a different part of the U.S., gets a job, deals with certain people, deals with certain assholes, transforms into the Hulk, move on to the next place. Rinse, lather, repeat for 80 episodes. It is a solid formula, but as a result, it does get extremely repetitive, and this is why I never finished the show. Well, one of two reasons why I never finished the show initially back in 2014, because by the time I had gotten to a certain point in season 4, I had rewatched the first 2 seasons. I had rewatched the first 2 seasons numerous times and plowed through season 3 and most of season 4. So by the time I'd done that, I was, no pun intended, hulked out. Like, I was like, okay, I can't get through this anymore. I'm done. But yeah, the first of my top 20, season 1, episode 2, The Beast Within. David Bradburn begins working at a zoo where research is being conducted on animal aggression. David learns that a corrupt zoo official has been smuggling diamonds within the animals into the zoo. A young scientist named Claudia Baxter, played by Caroline McWilliams, is framed for the animal deaths, and David is locked in a cage with an aggressive gorilla. which involves the Hulk transforming and fighting against a guy in a gorilla suit. Sound familiar, Jackie boy? This one kind of at first sounds a bit, well, not really generic because this is only the second episode. One thing that the show does very well consistently all throughout is how it handles its sci-fi elements and how it handles technobabble and doctor and scientist jargon. It helps that Bill Bixby is such a really good actor, but it feels like he genuinely actually, like he himself, but also the writers, tried their hardest to make this feel so believable and plausible. Like if somebody was afflicted with this condition, transforming into the Hulk, the way that they explain it and the way that they showcase it in the show, it does feel a bit more realistic, but in a way that's still fun, but it's also plausible and believable. And how David goes about throughout the series various ways trying to control the Hulk. This is the first of which where it's very prominent and it's still very believable and it's still showcased very well. His chemistry with the vet at the suit, Claudia, that's her name. His chemistry with Claudia is quite strong because Bill Bixby at the time was a pretty big pretty boy and sex symbol at the time. Every episode, usually, David's dealing with some other chick who either he develops feelings for or they more often than not develop feelings for him because Bill Bixby was just such a likable guy. And yeah, his chemistry with her is really strong. The science of him using aggression therapy and aggression research to try to control the Hulk is really good. It's very believable. And the B story of him investigating this smuggling ring in this zoo is interesting and enjoyable and captivating. And the Hulk outs, too, two of them are also fun to watch. The first of which is when David gets locked in the cage with the gorilla. I think I can't remember his. Oh crap! Hold on. Maybe George. Oh, Elliot. That's his name. Elliot. Yeah, he gets locked in a cage with Elliot, and Elliot's pissed off, so he starts punching him and knocking around the cage. And then David gets pissed off and hulks out, as Kenneth would call it. Every time he transforms, it's called hulking out. So David hulks out and roughs up Elliot and sends him flying. And then the second time is when the smugglers have been caught by David, so they tie him up and they're about to kill him. And then he hulks out again, roughs up the bad guys, and destroys their smuggling ring and exposes them to the police. And he runs away. It's a fun episode. For only the second episode of the series, it's still pretty action packed. And this is the one that just made me convinced utterly, like, okay, yeah, this show's great. I'm gonna love it. No matter what they do, I'm just gonna love it. Excuse me. Next on my top 20 is season 1, episode 5, 747. David Brown boards a Boeing 747 plane in San Francisco to travel to Chicago in pursuit of a cure for his metamorphosis. The airline captain and a flight attendant have planned the theft of a priceless Egyptian exhibit from the plane's cargo hold. After dealing with the scheming couple, David is forced to land the plane in Denver during one of his transformations into the Hulk. Some notes about this. Brandon Cruz, Bill Bixby's co-star on the courtship of Eddie's father, a sitcom series from 1969 to 1973, guest stars alongside Bill Bixby. And some of the plane scenes were taken from the film Airport 1975, because that was also a Universal movie, and this is a Universal show. So they'd recycle quite a bit of stock footage from various movies in this show. More on that in a little bit. Now, normally I don't really particularly care for episodes of TV shows that take place on a plane. Like there was an airport episode of Supernatural in the first season that instantly just killed any interest that I had for the show. It just, they tend to be very disinteresting and very just kind of boring and plain. There's also an airplane episode of, I think it was the second or third season of Bones, that was also a little hard to sit through, because it's inside a plane. After a little while, it tends to look the same because there's only so many places that you can go inside a plane. But this is probably the only exception. It helps that it's a big, giant cargo plane, so there is a little bit more space to move around in. But the heist and theft plot does mix pretty well with David Banner trying to cure himself of the Hulk. And the first time he hulks out, he takes care of the scheming couple, and then goes and he gets in touch with, I don't know what they're called, airline operators, I guess. And he's given instructions on how to fly the plane, because even though he's a brilliant scientist, he's not a pilot. So he's, along with his friend Brandon Cruz, they're trying to figure out how to land this plane because the brake lines and fuel lines have been sabotaged during the events of the episode. And then, while trying to keep the plane in control, David has his second Hulk out while he's in the plane seat, and while he's landing the plane, he's gradually transforming into the Hulk, and finally manages to stabilize the plane and land it as he fully transforms, and he rips his way out of the plane and runs away. It's really tense. It's really gritty. It's really captivating and keeps you on the edge of your seat. Highly, highly entertaining episode. Season 1 is definitely probably my second or third favorite episode of the entire series. It's very, very classic and very entertaining. Even though there are some times where the show feels like it's trying to find its footing, I think for the most part, this show did definitely hit the ground running in a lot of ways. Next up is Season 1, Episode 7, Never Give a Trucker an Even Break. In Nevada, a group of hijackers led by Ted, played by Frank Christie, and Mike, played by Grand L. Bush, it's a very unfortunate name, steal a semi-truck from the father of a young woman named Joni, played by Jennifer Darling, as she makes plans to steal it back. David Bradford becomes mixed up in her plans and is forced to transform into the Hulk to save both of their lives. Note, much of the footage from the chase scenes were taken from Steven Spielberg's TV movie Duel, which I guess Spielberg was not very happy about at one point. Because they did something similar. Wait, no. Spielberg didn't direct the Andromeda Strain. Never mind. But the $6 Million Man, which was another Universal show and another Kenneth Johnson show in an early Season 1 episode of that series, recycled a lot of footage from the 1971 Andromeda Strain film. But there's not that much to say about this episode. It pretty much just is the Incredible Hulk kind of mixed with Duel, just with much less ambiguity. But it's just an entertaining series of hijackings and chase scenes, and two people in one small car being chased by a big giant truck. some good, some bad, and at a couple points, David hulks out to save the girl and stop the hijackers' plans. Again, very tense, very entertaining, very gripping, and just very classic and engaging. I love it. Again, pardon Roman. And was one of the, not really the first, but there's one joke in this episode that I think kind of would become an unofficial Hulk meme. Is that after the after the first time he transforms and he's picked up by Joni, she finds him and his clothes are tattered after he had just metamorphosized back from the Hulk. He sees his appearance and he's like, I really need to get shirts that stretch. Yeah, I think that kind of would become a Hulk joke in later years. Next is season 1, episode 8, Life and Death. While on his way to volunteer for a DNA experiment in Marysville, Oregon, I don't think that exists. Oh, okay. The pre-December 1853 name for Corvallis, David Bernard meets a young pregnant woman who is also hitchhiking. Both share a ride to the same town where the young woman explains her plans to give up her newborn child for adoption. David learns the physician involved, played by Andrew Robinson, pre-Hellraiser, the physician involved in the illegal adoption is the same one experimenting on him, and that he, his nurse, and assistants are selling the newborn babies on the black market. This episode also guest stars Julie Adams and Diane Savita. And of course, Andrew Robinson, a very young Andrew Robinson. This one was quite surprising. It's pretty emotional and heartfelt, and it does deal with some pretty touchy and, what's the word? Not racy, but like quite dark and questionable subject matter, like selling infants on the black market is pretty messed up and dark, especially for a show at this time. And the bond that David forms with this young woman, I can't remember her name. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but it's very sweet. It's almost kind of fatherly in a way, because right as she gives birth, she decides that she wants to keep it. And then it seems like Andrew Robinson's character is just going to take the baby away and still sell it. But during his second Hulk out, Hulk shows up and saves the baby from being sold by Robinson's character and gives the baby back to its mom. Because one thing about the Hulk in this show is specifically stated, Hulk never kills anybody, and he doesn't really, well, I mean, he kind of hurts people, but simply just by picking up evildoers and tossing them far away, usually through doors or windows or into buildings so they can smash through them. But he never hurts animals, he never hurts women, and he never hurts kids. So seeing Lou Ferrigno, 6'4", like 280-pound, big muscle bodybuilder dude, painted green, holding a baby, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of cute. And seeing the Hulk return the baby to his mom is pretty cute. But yeah, the subject matter of this episode is quite surprising, and again, it's very gripping and very engaging, and just a lot of fun. Yeah, and the Hulk outs are fun too. And next up is season 1, episode 9, Earthquakes Happen. A nuclear power plant in California contains powerful gamma radiation equipment, and David poses as a physics scientist named Dr. Robert Patterson. I think this is the only time in the entire series where David outright just uses a completely different name. to gain access to it. While experimenting with the machine, an earthquake occurs and causes massive cave-ins in the facility. With the reactor about to explode, David leads a group of survivors through the facility before transforming into the Hulk and turning the cooling system on to cool the reactors. And note, footage from the 1974 film Earthquake was used for this episode. Hey, Jackie boy, remember Earthquake? This one's very straightforward, and that's part of what I like about it. It is a disaster movie with the Incredible Hulk caught in the middle. At first, the characters are pretty quick to realize that that David is not this physician. What the hell is the name of the damn thing? A physics scientist. Excuse me. They quickly figure out that David is not this guy, but once this earthquake occurs and all the survivors find David, he still uses his knowledge of science and his knowledge of medical expertise to help and save and rescue the survivors. And he uses his abilities as the Hulk to save the rest of the state and possibly the world by shutting down this nuclear reactor. Again, very tense, very riveting, very entertaining. Because yeah, it's Earthquake the movie mixed with the Incredible Hulk. It's an odd mix, a disaster film mixed with a superhero film, but it works and it's entertaining as hell. I love it. So that's it for season 1. Season 1 consists of 10 episodes. Moving on to season 2, debuting September 22nd, 1978. The season 2 premiere, which was a 2-hour special with later showings being in 2 parts in syndication, titled as Bride of the Incredible Hulk on some video releases. Dr. David Benton travels to Honolulu, Hawaii to meet Dr. Carolyn Fields, played by Mariette Hartley, a psychologist whose technique might help cure the Hulk. However, Dr. Fields is in the terminal stages of an incurable disease. I think it's stated to be Lou Gehrig's disease, but I'm not quite sure. With the pair working in close proximity, love begins to bloom with tragic results. Now, this was a very special episode at the time. Meadow's dad, Meadow herself is kind of a fan of this show too, but her dad, her real dad, is still to this day a huge fan of 70s TV shows like $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman, The Incredible Hulk, and Dukes of Hazzard. And I remember her telling me recently that she has seen this episode with her dad, and she remembered her dad telling her that when this episode first aired, it was a big deal. And I can see why. It was, again, the return of one of the biggest primetime TV shows at the time. Like, this show was hugely popular in its heyday, and I think this was the beginning of the peak of its heyday. And once this episode came out, Mariette Hartley won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series for her performance. And it's very easy to see why. Yeah, none of these are mine. None of these Funkos are mine. They're all Meadows. Although, yeah, I've purchased every single one of these Funkos, and there's more. Oh, that's good. What was I talking about? Oh, so yeah, Bill Bixby and Mariette's their chemistry is very believable. It's very strong. both as colleagues in the science world, but watching these two fall in love with each other, and they actually get married in this episode, hence the term married. And Dr. Banner actually gives his real name on the marriage certificate as David Bruce Banner, which I think is the only time he ever. And during the events of this, he does reveal his real identity to Marriott as the thought to be deceased Dr. David Banner. So yeah, when they get married, he gives his real name on the marriage certificate, which I don't know how the hell he meant. Well, no, it was the 70s, so people weren't quite as nosy back then ish, but whatever. But watching these two try to figure out a way to use the Hulk's regenerative abilities to possibly cure Marriott, what's her name? Fuck. Sorry. There's a lot that I want to say, so beg your pardon. Oh, Carolyn. Trying to use the Hulk's regenerative abilities to cure Carolyn, it again is done in a very convincing way, and you do get the sense that it could have possibly worked. And during this time too, she's using her psychology methods and various therapies to try to help David learn how to control the Hulk, which doesn't have a whole lot of success. But what really makes this captivating is the love story between David and Carolyn, and its tragic ending too. In true Universal fashion, you could call the Hulk a Universal monster, because this episode has a very tragic and unfortunate ending. During a, I think it's either a typhoon or a hurricane that hits Honolulu, Carolyn is on her last legs with her disease. And during a drive to the hospital, once they procure a sample of the Hulk's skin after he hulks out during a nightmare, Carolyn suffers a nasty seizure, because that's one symptom of her disease, that she gets these splitting headaches and she goes into these manic seizures. She jumps out of the car, and in the middle of this typhoon, David runs after her, and he gets electrocuted by a transformer that falls over, so he hulks out again, and he goes and runs and tries to save Carolyn, but she knows that she's too far gone, so she ends up dying in the Hulk's arms. But the Hulk is still transformed, so she kisses his cheek and says, "I'll miss you, David," and then dies in Lou's arms. And then as the typhoon ends, it goes back to Bill Bixby now holding Carolyn dead in his arms, shirtless and with tears running down his face. And I ain't gonna lie, the first time I saw this, I had tears running down my face too. I can see why Marriott won an Emmy for her performance in this episode. It's very well done. It's very captivating. It's well written, well acted. She did a damn good job, and she definitely deserved that Emmy, in my opinion. She did. Yeah, she was great. And this is a great episode. Great premiere. This might be my favorite premiere for any season of the entire series. And I think a lot of people would agree. It's the best premiere. Hello, Roman. He's very happy in his bedroom. Coming up after that is season 2, episode 3, Ricky. Racetrack utility worker David Beckman befriends a mentally challenged young man named Ricky, played by Mickey Jones, who is goaded into driving a defective car in a demolition derby in New Mexico. Gordon Jump guest stars. Mickey Jones makes his first appearance. Oh yeah, the actor, excuse me. And Gerald McRaney makes his second appearance in the series. Gerald McRaney would make a lot of guest appearances throughout the show, and a lot of people probably would recognize him as a big TV and film actor. He was in Simon and Simon, Major Dad, Promised Land, and House of Cards. There's not that much to say about Ricky. That one thing that I love about this series is the 1970s aesthetic and vibes. It's very, like I said in my speech, it is dated. So I've talked to a lot of people about this show, especially like fans of 70s TV shows. Like my dad's a fan. I've had a lot of teachers who are fans of this show. I have a couple uncles. My stepdad is a fan. Even Meadow's stepdad was a fan. And a lot of people say that this show was good for its time. And that's actually the only thing that my movie making teacher actually said. It was great for its time. That's how he described it. Um, and a lot of people who grew up in the 70s have a special attachment to this show. And I see why, because this show oozes and just bleeds 1970s in every fiber and cell in its being. And I love it. I love the 70s look. I love the 70s aesthetic. I love the 70s music and the 70s vibes. I just love it. And I think this is one of the first episodes, or maybe the very first episode of the entire series that screams the 1970s. Like Hulk Breaks Las Vegas from season 1 is pretty 70s. Terror in Times Square screams the 70s. Of Guilt, Models, and Murder screams the 70s. All season 1 episodes. But this is the first one where like the 70s aesthetic is a net positive for the show. And for me, I just describe it as it's very comforting. Like I watched this show, and with how 70s it is and how much simpler times were back then, it's just a very warm and loving and comforting feeling watching this. But also the plot itself of David Banner befriending he's retarded. That's what they say in this episode. Like he is retarded, Ricky. But yeah, a mentally challenged young man, helping him come into his own and getting him into a school that can help him deal with his handicaps, and him befriending Ricky's older brother and saving him from being crushed in a demolition derby as the Hulk. It's all very entertaining, very sweet, very cute, well acted, well written, just well done. Love it. Oh, coming up next is season 2, episode 4, Rainbow's End. David Bishop travels to San Remos Racetrack, a horse racetrack in the southwestern United States. While working, he meets a Native American man played by Ned Romero, whose medicinal herb brew helped calm troubled racehorse Rainbow's End in the hope that it can help him. But somebody does not want the horse to race. This one, too, also screams 70s vibes. And also, fun fact, this is one of 2 episodes to share an episode title with the later Kenneth Johnson produced series Walker, Texas Ranger. Haven't seen that episode, so I don't know if they're similar at all, but I don't think so. This is notable for being one of the first times, if not maybe the only time, where David Banner was able to kind of prevent a Hulk out. Because one risk that David has as the Hulk is if he has a nightmare or if he has REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, is a bad nightmare or a bad memory or flashback can trigger a Hulk out. But using this medicinal herb, because the Native American man, he witnesses David transform into the Hulk when someone tries to set a barn with the horse Rainbow's End on fire. He hulks out, saves all the horses, and saves Rainbow's End. And then this guy watches David turn from the Hulk back into David. So then he's like, okay, nope, you're going to be using this herb. Seeing is believing. So take this. So he takes this herb, and it works. It's successful in keeping David from hulking out when he has a nightmare. But sadly, because of the events later on in the show, with some douchebag just trying to assassinate this horse simply because he's jealous, he hulks out again, saves the horse, and then has to run away, so he can never use this herb medicine ever again. Which is also a little tragic. But yeah, fun episode, fun Hulk outs. I love the vibes. I like the concept too. It's just a fun episode. Hello, Roman. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just talking with somebody real quick. Okay. Moving on. Next up, we have Another Path. Season 2, Episode 6. David Bramer meets a blind Chinese philosopher from San Francisco named Lee Sung, who may be able to help him control the Hulk through meditation practices, but encounters problems with Steve Silva, played by Tom Lee Holland, a former student and friend of Lee Sung, who has perverted the old man's teachings. Notes, this is the first time that Banner refers to his alter ego as the Hulk, and Mako, the actor Mako, who was Arnold's wizard friend in Conan the Barbarian, makes his first guest appearance as Lee Sung. This episode is pretty much like a martial arts movie from the late 70s mixed with the Incredible Hulk, which also is quite captivating. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Karate Kid, where Lee Sung obviously is Mr. Miyagi and David Banner is what's his name? Daniel LaRusso. It's a strange comparison, but you have a older Asian martial artist teaching a younger man with a lot of mental issues and anger problems, using meditation and martial arts in order to center himself and control his emotions and get his life more on track, which Lee Sung does do that for David. He's at one point he's able to be lost in meditation for like 6 hours at a time, which is another aspect, or not really aspect, but another way that David Banner explores to try to control the Hulk, which is fascinating. But also watching David Hulk out to try to, because Lee Sung is blind. So at one point he goes and gets into a fight with his former students or pupils, whatever that you can call them. Then he hulks out in an attempt to save him. So watching a blind martial artist and a green-skinned, super strong creature go up against a bunch of goons in a martial arts movie, it's entertaining. I love it. You're going to be hearing me say that a lot. Next up is season 2, episode 13. This one is pretty slim in terms of its plot. While working at a car wash in a black neighborhood, David Butler befriends the younger brother of a coworker who's being exploited by a drug lord with a Black Panther as a pet. This episode guest stars Ernie Hudson and Tony Burton. Obviously, he would play. Who did Ernie Hudson? Oh, Ernie was Winston in the Ghostbusters series, amongst many other movies and shows. And Tony Burton, he was known for Tony Duke Evers, who was the manager of Apollo in the first 6 Rocky films. And it would then go on to become Rocky's manager. This one is, again, very simple. This is a very special episode for myself. This was, like I said, that The Beast Within was what convinced me, yeah, this show's great. This was the episode that convinced me this is one of my favorite shows of all time. The 70s vibes and 70s aesthetic is so entertaining, and it's so captivating, and it's so just comforting. The 70s blaxploitation music, that kind of is what well, on a TV level, but it's kind of like the Hulk mixed with a blaxploitation movie. It's a strange mix, but it is still a good mix. And again, it oozes the 70s vibes and 70s aesthetic, like the music, the clothing, the fashion, the architecture, the nightclubs, the way the African Americans dress and walk and talk, like the super low riding Cadillac cars with the super fuzzy interiors, with the like the foam dice hanging from the rear view mirror. It just screams the 1970s, and I love it. And said Cadillac, owned by the drug lord, gets destroyed by the Hulk in a pretty fun scene. But also, the end of the episode, Hulks out again and destroys a 70s Pitmobile nightclub, and it's also very entertaining. But also, the chemistry between David and one of his coworkers, that's also really strong, and it's also really sweet, the bond that he forms with this kid and his 10-year-old brother, whom actually David saves at one point because he was about to die of insulin shock because the kid's diabetic. Yeah, it's very sweet. It's very touching and gripping and captivating. I love this episode. One of my, if I was to make a top 5, a definitive top 5, this would be in that. Maybe number 2 or number 3. I love Like a Brother. Just love it. Next, by the way, do I have a, no, I don't have a pen here. Shit. So, hold on. Sorry. Okay, so coming in at number 10, I believe, is season 2, episode 14, Haunted. This episode is the closest that the show ever gets to being, excuse me. This is the closest that the show ever comes to crossing over with the horror genre. Because it never specifically does. This show crosses over with a lot of various genres, like blaxploitation, like I just talked about, martial arts movies, which were really popular and exploding at the time, action, science fiction, comedy, drama, but not really horror. But this is the closest that it ever comes. Mover David Barrett helps a woman renovate her family's old house in New Hampshire, but strange events start to occur. And that's it for the plot. This one has a really interesting twist where like David gets involved with some kind of family scheme where a young girl had died, and it seems like it was a twin set of daughters, and one had died when they were really young, and then the other one lived on and became some kind of pariah in her community. But at one point, it stated that this twin, she apparently had a heart murmur, which I don't quite remember what that is. Hang on, let me. A heart murmur is an extra sound heard between the normal lub-dub sounds of the heartbeat. These sounds can be detected using a stethoscope and may indicate either a harmless condition or a potential heart problem. Excuse me. Heart murmurs can be classified into two main categories: innocent, harmless, and abnormal. One of the twins had a heart murmur, and they discussed this when it seems like she's having some kind of heart issue. But David, whom is a medical doctor as well, like listens in on her, and he suspects, yeah, I don't hear anything. But then it's revealed that the twin who's still alive is actually the one who was thought to have died. Okay, I think David's just doing something he's not supposed to be. David, I think Roman's doing something he's not supposed to be doing. Excuse me. Um, but yeah, it's revealed that the twin who was thought to have died when they were young actually did still live, and the other twin whom we thought we were seeing and interacting with this entire time, that's the one who died. If that makes any sense. Excuse me. It was a little confusing the first time I saw it, but also the way that this episode is executed, it does have a lot in common with the haunted house genre, and there are some pretty creepy and mysterious moments. And also watching David Hulk out amidst the middle of a possible haunted house situation is pretty entertaining. But yeah, the real thing that makes this episode memorable is its twist, how it was done and how well it was done, and also the creepy vibes and atmosphere that this episode was going for. So yeah, this one's pretty good. And that'll be it for season 2. Oh, but before I move on, so the episode The Quiet Room, season 2, episode 21, David Ballard is working as an orderly at Valley View Sanatorium, where he discovers that a doctor is performing unethical experiments on the patients. Then David is put in a straitjacket and locked up to keep him quiet. Decent, kind of standard episode. But this was the very first episode that featured Charles Napier voicing the Hulk. For the first season and the first 20 episodes of season 2, and also the first 2 pilot films, the Hulk himself was played by Lou Ferrigno, but he was voiced by Ted Cassidy. Ted Cassidy was an American actor, and he tended to play unusual characters in offbeat or science fiction works, such as in Star Trek and I Dream of Janine. And he played Lurch on the original Addams Family TV series from the 60s. He narrated the intro sequence for the Incredible Hulk TV series, and he provided growls and roars for the Hulk for the first 2 seasons before his death. Ted Cassidy was a whopping 6'9" in height, and he died of a pretty early age. He was 46 years old, and he died January 16th, 1979. And I think his death was a result. Oh, wait, no. Cassidy underwent surgery in Los Angeles to have a benign tumor removed from his heart, the complications arose several days later while he was recuperating at home, and he died at the same hospital where he was operated on. Excuse me. Yeah, he played Lurch through all 64 episodes of The Addams Family. Let's see. He was in 3 episodes of Star Trek. He voiced Frankenstein Jr. from Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles. He played the giant in Jack and the Beanstalk. He voiced Galactus in the episode Galactus of the 60s Fantastic Four show. He was in an episode of Tarzan. And yeah, he tend to play these really offbeat, weird, and strange characters throughout his movie and TV shows. Because he, not to sound bad, but he was kind of a strange looking man. He was very tall and very lanky and skinny. And he also had a very long, he kind of looked like Richard Kiel a little bit. He had a very long and, how do I put this? Like kind of strangely shaped face. He had a huge jaw, a huge chin, very sunken cheekbones, and kind of a huge forehead and huge eyebrows. So that physique and appearance kind of lent itself well to strange looking characters. Like he pretty much just did in real life. He looked like Lurch from the original Addams Family show. He also played the Bigfoot robot in part 2, or in the episode The Return of Bigfoot part 2, and he also played Bigfoot in 2 episodes of The $6 Million Man. But yeah, so after he passed away, Charles Napier, who a lot of people will know who Charles Napier is. Charles Napier he's dead too, was an American actor who is known for playing supporting and occasional leading roles in television and films. He was frequently cast as police officers, soldiers, or authority figures, many of them villainous or corrupt. He was the guy who played Murdoch in Rambo First Blood Part 2. So there you go. Or he was also one of the guards who was killed by Hannibal Lecter when Hannibal escaped in Silence of the Lambs. He was the guy that Hannibal beat to death with his nightstick. Charles is one of those actors who was in a whole bunch of stuff, but a lot of people tend to not remember their names, like Gary Sinise. But yeah, The Quiet Room was the first episode where Charles Napier voiced the Hulk, and he would voice the Hulk for the rest of the series leading up to its cancellation. So going into season 3, debuting September 21st, 1979, coming in at, I think, coming in at number 9 is season 3. Season 3, episode 4, The Slam. Also, with Charles Napier making a guest appearance as one of the main characters. When he is arrested for vagrancy, David Brendan is sent to a work camp in Jensen County, where he becomes prisoner number 1124. While in the work camp, David witnesses corruption in the prison system by the prison warden and can't work on exposing him with Jack McGee nearby. Charles Napier makes his first guest appearance. Mark Alamo, who was Ghoul Dukat on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, makes his second guest appearance. And Marcel Buchanan voiced the Hulk in this episode. I'm guessing since Charles was busy actually acting in this episode to do so. This one is just captivating because it's the Incredible Hulk mixed with a Prison Break movie, like the show Prison Break or Shawshank Redemption. Excuse me. Neither of the Hulk outs in this episode are all that entertaining, but that's okay because the Prison Break side of things, where these prisoners are exposing and collecting evidence for the corruption and dealing with the asshole guards and the asshole prison warden, that is all entertaining and captivating stuff in and of itself. And Charles Napier is a good actor. His chemistry with Bill Bixby is quite solid and quite good. Watching these guys deal with the bullshit that these guards and warden deal out to them day in and day out is effectively frustrating and captivating. Overall, yeah, not much to say, but The Slam is a solid episode. It's very, very well written, very well acted. Love it. Coming up is, hold on. Season number 8, season 3, episode 8, titled Homecoming. At Thanksgiving, David reluctantly returns to his childhood home in Trevorton, Colorado, where he learns that his father, D.W. Banner, played by John Marley, may lose his land. Once there, David must fight a crop-destroying plague and resolve a bitter emotional issue. Diana Mulder also appears in this episode as David's sister, Helen Banner. Note, Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood visited the set of this episode to show his viewers how the series was made and the transformations that Lou Ferrigno goes through to portray the Hulk. Which, quickly, I would like to break this down real quick. So, Lou worked out like 4 or 5 hours a day in order to maintain his physique as the Hulk. He would have a prosthetic eyebrow piece that was glued onto him to make his eyebrow look more bulbous and monstrous. He would have a fake nose, greenish white, incredibly uncomfortable contact lenses put in, which Bill Bixby had to wear those too. The first sign that you could tell that David was about to transform whenever he got pissed off, the camera would zoom in on his eyes and he'd be wearing the contacts, which were, I think, the glass kind, which were very uncomfortable and very dangerous to wear. And Lou would also wear this wig that was made out of dyed yak's hair. And he would have his entire body that wasn't covered by his pants painted with this bright green it was like this color, grease paint slathered all over Lou's body. They would apply like 3 or 4 coatings of the stuff, and they'd also powder it to make it not shine on Lou's body. And apparently, this process, it would take about 2 hours to apply and an hour to take off, along with the eyebrow and nose piece. And I've seen this episode of Mr. Rogers, and Lou went on to say that wearing the paint and the prosthetic pieces, it was very irritating, which I can actually attest. I've had face paint applied to my face. It was just white corpse paint, and I could not wear it. After like 10 or 15 minutes, my skin would just, it felt like something was biting me. It would twitch and itch and kind of sting. So I had to wipe it all off after like 10 minutes. It was very uncomfortable. So I can only imagine the torment that Lou had to go through wearing that shit for 5 years. Oh, crap. Hang on. I got to use the bathroom. So I'll be right back, guys. Ooh. Ooh. Oh. Kind of. Okay, guys, excuse me. Oh. Oops. Oh. Furbies. Okay. Part of the intrusion, guys. Nature calls. So, Homecoming, I kind of slept on this episode at first because when I first saw it, I just kind of thought it was, it's just like an average episode. This was sort of at the beginning of, um, where I wasn't getting tired of the show necessarily, but this was when I was really noticing that the show was getting very formulaic. And also, season 3, which, funny enough, hold on. So there's the Slam. Season 3 does have a lot of really good episodes, but I think it might have. So there's the Slam, Homecoming, the Snare. And Equinox. Okay, so there's 4 episodes of this season that are amongst my favorites, but I think this has the least. No, that's season 5. But season 3, I think, might be my second least favorite season of the entire series. Because, funny, this was technically at the peak of the show's popularity, in my opinion. This was the longest season of the entire series, with a grand total of 23 episodes. But I just think this is the one that seemed to kind of drift the most, in my opinion. Like, it was, none of it was really all that bad, but there was just a lot of standard basic episodes. And initially that's what I thought Homecoming was at first. But upon rewatching it recently, I was absolutely captivated. This was really the only time that the show ever explored any of David's life before the series began, except for the initial incident that started the series. David was trying to figure out a way to tap into the hidden strengths that humans have, i.e., during adrenaline rushes due to the death of his first wife. But this is really the only one that explores David's like childhood and preteen years. Um, and we learned that the reason why David became a scientist and a physician was because his mother passed away of some kind of unknown disease. I actually think it might have been a similar disease that his second wife died of. It seems to be kind of similar. And we also learned that a big reason, so the bitter emotional issue is David and his father, DW, do not see eye to eye. DW wanted David to stay behind and help him with the farm, and David wanted to run away and become a scientist and escape the memories of his mother. And his sister, Helen, is kind of the mediator between the two. But he's the first family member that David reunites with upon coming to their childhood home. And it is a pretty, excuse me, I just ate before I started doing this video, so I got gas. Shut up. Watching their reunion is quite heartwarming and uplifting. And she convinces him to help resolve this crop destroying plague, which is a species of beetles that their larvae chew through crops. And again, the Hulk outside of things is not that interesting. Like, they're just kind of basic standard Hulk transforms and saves the day type stuff. But the relationship between David and his sister and David and his father is the main thing to watch in this episode, and is the real big thing that's so captivating in this series. And yeah, it's very entertaining. It's very sweet and heartwarming, and it ends on a pretty bittersweet note. David, transforms, saves his father during a faulty plane takeoff. Uh, his dad discovers that David is the Hulk, and right when Jack McGee or the cops are about to show up, he shoos away the Hulk, and like Lou as the Hulk kind of like reaches for his dad's face as like a brief moment of recognizing who he is. And then when Jack McGee shows up at DW's house with Helen, DW kind of sneaks David out the back door, and without any words being spoken, he's just like kind of pushing him away a little bit. And then they hear Jack's voice, and Bill Bixby and the guy who John Marley, Bill and John, they share a look, they share a bitter smile, they embrace, and then David runs away on Thanksgiving of all days. And we never see his family again for the rest of the series. So that's why I say it's kind of bittersweet. It's a bit of a missed opportunity that he never could have come back and tried to like hide with his family to try to cure his issue. But it's very sweet. It's very, very well written, very captivating, very well acted, and just entertaining as hell. Yeah. Coming up next at number 7 is The Snare, Season 3, Episode 9. After accepting a ride on a private plane, David Bennett finds himself stranded on an island that is uninhabited, with the exception of a psychotic Michael Sutton, played by Bradford Dillman, who is a hunter of men, who greets his discovery of David's Hulk condition as a sign of an even more appealing challenge. And if you probably could tell, this episode is one of many adaptations of Richard Connell's classic short story, The Most Dangerous Game. And yeah, that's exactly what this episode is. It's David / the Hulk versus a psychotic hunter on a secluded tropical island. And that's it. That's all you need to know. David must use his wits and intelligence against a man who is a clear psycho who just wants to hunt David down for sport. And seeing that David can turn into the Hulk, he sees that it's like, ooh, I want to hunt that thing. Show me the creature. Show me the Hulk. That's pretty much what the guy says. And the guy gets so arrogant and so cocky that he ends up getting screwed over by his own arrogance and psychoticness. He falls onto, he's carrying a crossbow, and he has some arrows that are dipped in poison, but the arrowheads pierce through his quiver and stab him in the leg. So he ends up being killed by his own hubris. Very tense, very gripping, very action packed, and very entertaining. I also slept on this episode too when I first saw it, but upon rewatching it, I was like, wow, this could have been a two-parter. And actually, there's a lot of my favorite episodes that could have been two-parters. This show has quite a few, actually. But, yeah, love them. Snare is a good one. Excuse me. Coming up next, I think that's... oh, wait, no. Coming in at number 6 is Season 3, Episode 21, Equinox. Librarian David Belden is trapped at a spoiled heiress vernal equinox masquerade ball on a private island with the ultimate costume, the Hulk. His appearance gives Jack McGee the perfect opportunity to use his special tranquilizer gun, which he had started using, I think, in the middle of season, or he started trying to use in the middle of season 2. His tranquilizer gun has darts that are filled with curare, which curare is actually a very deadly poison. But I think they explain in the show that because of the Hulk's endurance and regenerative abilities, that he may be able to resist the effects of curare, but still succumb to some of its effects and put the Hulk under, essentially. Never is utilized in the show. The gun either gets destroyed or Jack just misses out on, his opportunity. But this episode's quite entertaining too. This one also bleeds a lot of late 70s, early 80s aesthetic. This episode debuted March 21st, 1980. What was the first episode to debut in the 80s? Oh, okay. Season 3, episode 12, Broken Image, was the first episode to be aired in the 1980s. Excuse me. Yeah, Equinox, it has a fun vibe. It's kind of a whodunit murder mystery at times too, because there's somebody in this spoiled heiress's house who's got a hate boner against her, because she is kind of a dislikable woman. She's very snobby. She's very bitchy. She's very used to getting what she wants. She's got a hard-on for David, but because the episode begins with David running away as the Hulk, he must return to her island to gather up his belongings and leave. But because she's got a hard-on for him, she won't let him leave. And during this party, he hulks out, trying to do something. I can't remember. I rewatched this one, but I can't remember. Do something. But the highlight of the entire episode for me, so Jack McGee throughout the entire series, in various episodes, there's some where he never appears, but he's a recurring pain in the ass. And he shows up at various points in like the nick of time, almost captures David Banner as the Hulk, or he shows up right as the Hulk runs away. But this is one of few times where he has a prominent role in an episode, and he comes face to face with David Banner, but David is wearing a costume and he has a mask on. And earlier in the series, during oh shit, oops, hold up. There we go. In season 2, not the first two-parter, the two-parter Mystery Man. After getting into a nasty car wreck, David is befriended by Jack McGee, who's unaware of John Doe's real identity. During this car accident, David had his face fucked up, and he also has amnesia. And in the second episode, after suffering a nasty plane crash in the middle of a forest in Arizona, they're forced to flee a forest fire and avoid a starving Mexican wolf pack. But during their escape, David recovers his memory just in time to learn why McGee is so obsessed with capturing the Hulk. And this is when McGee discovers that the Hulk is a guy who transforms into the Hulk. He thought the Hulk was just like Bigfoot or the Falk monster or something, just like a cryptid. But in Equinox, this is probably the closest that Jack comes to discovering that David Banner is actually the Hulk and David Banner is still alive. but because he's wearing a pretty unconvincing mask. But there's a really good exchange between the two where David's trying to reason with Jack, saying, hey, look, dude, please leave me alone. I just want to rid myself of the creature. And if you keep screwing with me, you're going to unleash something that you don't want to deal with. So please, please just leave me alone. But Jack is just having none of it. And then the episode ends with David hulking out and trying to save this spoiled bitch's life from the hands of her obsessive and jealous boyfriend. So good, solid episode. It's pretty tense. It's pretty mysterious. It's got some good performances, and that scene between Jack and David is really, really good. Alrighty, so getting into season 4. This might be my favorite season of the entire series. So starting episode or number 5, season 4, episode 6, Bring Me the Head of the Hulk, which I believe was the very first episode of the entire series to be directed by Bill Bixby himself, actually. And it was the first episode to air in 1981. David Bedford falls for an elaborate trap set to kill the Hulk, orchestrated by a mercenary named LaFont, who is working for the publisher of the National Register's competition named Neil Hines. David receives help from an unlikely ally, that being Jack McGee. This one's just pretty straightforward. It's a bit, no, it's not similar to the snare, but it kind of has a similar concept of somebody actually trying to hunt down and kill the Hulk. In this one, I actually think it's a bit more entertaining. This mercenary dude, yeah, he sets up this trap to try to capture and kill the Hulk, and he wants to do it for $1 million, which for 1981, that was a lot of money. And at the end of the episode, during a fire that's set inside this trap that David was in, he hulks out, and the mercenary is outside with a big bazooka getting ready to shoot the Hulk, but the Hulk escapes. He saves other people that were trapped inside, and he walks up to this mercenary. He takes the bazooka and he twists it around the dude's arms, and picks the dude up and throws him at the cops and runs away. It's very action-packed, very entertaining, quite tense, and is yet another one that I kind of slept on initially, but is a very entertaining and memorable episode, in my opinion. And seeing David receive some help indirectly from Jack McGee is a nice twist. Next up is coming in at number 4 is King of the Beach. A struggling restaurant worker and bodybuilder named Carl Molino, played by Lou Ferrigno. He plays a dual role in this episode as Carl and the Hulk. And this was Lou Ferrigno's very first speaking role in any movie or TV show outside Pumping Iron. Carl enters a King of the Beach contest and befriends fellow worker David Bennett. Carl doesn't realize who his unscrupulous competitors will be, though. And Ken Waller appears as a bodybuilding competitor in this episode, who is also another former bodybuilder who was also in Pumping Iron. Shawnee Boy might know who that guy is. This one is just captivating, partially because I love Lou Ferrigno. Lou Ferrigno is a great guy. He's almost as interesting as Arnie, in my opinion. And in some ways, I do think he's a bit more inspirational both as a bodybuilder and also just as a man in Hollywood than Arnie, almost. So a little bit about Lou Ferrigno real quick. Lou was born in 1951. Let's see. Born Brooklyn, New York, November 9th, 1951. And when he was 6 years old, Ferrigno says he believes he had a series of ear infections and he lost 75 to 80% of his hearing, though his condition was not diagnosed until he was 3 years old. Hearing loss and his speech impediment, he had a very, very heavy and thick, like, deaf slur. Like, I don't want to try to imitate it like I'm making fun of him, but okay, so a lot of people who are deaf or hard of hearing, they have this slur where, okay, I'll just quote Lou. This is how Lou talks from this episode, King of the Beach. Yeah, well, he'd be surprised. The first time he ever saw me, he just thought it was some big dumb lump of muscle, and when I opened my mouth, he knew it. Like he has these very thick like sounds all throughout the way he talks. I can still understand him perfectly fine, but you hear Lou talk and you immediately just know, like, okay, yeah, he's deaf, or he was deaf for a long time. A couple years ago, I think in 2022, he ended up getting a cochlear implant. But I also think throughout, maybe in his like 30s or maybe his 40s, he probably had tubes put in at some point. But I think he had some kind of other surgery that cleared up a lot of that gunk that was in his ears, and he regained some of his hearing. But I think for a long time, he was still like 40 or 50% deaf. So, but Lou began reading comic books such as Hulk and Spider-Man. Lou is actually a big fan of Spider-Man too. Later saying, I was obsessed with power and I wanted to be strong enough so that I could be able to defend myself, which eventually made him take up bodybuilding. Here's where it gets kind of interesting. There's a big parallel between Lou and Arnold. My father rejected me because I was not the perfect son. So I fantasized about being like the Hulk, and that's what led to bodybuilding. Of course, as I mentioned last year during my Arnold Schwarzenegger video, Arnold, of course, had a very strained and tumultuous relationship with his dad. Lou would also have his own strained and tumultuous relationship with his dad. Although I think some of that was somewhat mediated because also, like Arnold, Lou's father was also a sheriff's deputy, and Lou's dad wanted him to become a police officer too. And he actually did become a sheriff's deputy later in life after retiring from bodybuilding and taking a break from acting. Also, kind of similar to Arnold, Ferrigno started weight training at the age of 13, citing bodybuilder and Hercules star Steve Reeves as one of his role models. I think Steve also influenced Arnold a little bit too. Because he could not afford to buy weights, he made his own using a broomstick and pails, which he partially filled with cement. After graduating from high school in 1969, Ferrigno would win his first major title, IFBB Mr. America. And 4 years later, he won the title IFBB Mr. Universe. And early in his career, he lived in Columbus, Ohio, and trained with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in 1974, he came in second on his first attempt at the Mr. Olympia competition. He came in third the following year, and his attempt to beat Schwarzenegger was the subject of the 1977 documentary Pumping Iron. The documentary is what made Ferrigno famous, although the Hulk obviously was what really catapulted him into superstardom. But yeah, going back to King of the Beach real quick. Lou has gone on to state that during the making of the Incredible Hulk TV series, Ferrigno would find a father figure with Bill Bixby. Surely Bill probably worked kind of like Lou's acting coach throughout the series. Because Lou has stated that him being deaf actually was a what's the word? Like a positive towards his performance as the Hulk. Back then, sign language was a thing, but learning how to read lips more so is what Lou was trained in. But still, people who are deaf, they tend to express more with their face and their body language. And so, since Lou knew how to do that, he used that to his advantage while playing the Hulk, because the Hulk doesn't talk, but he still has the body of a human, so he emotes with his face and his body language. But still, surely Bill probably did work as an acting coach for Lou, and over the course of the show, Bill took Lou under his wing and became a father figure to Lou throughout the show. And with this episode, especially with Lou just playing a regular guy in the show, this is the only time where we get to see Lou and Bill's chemistry on screen, and I love it. It's very believable. It doesn't really come off like acting. It just comes off like Bill and Lou just being Bill and Lou together. Kind of something that's a bit of a running gag with, or not really a gag, but with some of the recent episodes I've talked about on this list, the Hulk outside of things is not the most interesting thing. Like, it's still fun and entertaining, but it's just kind of getting a bit basic at this point. But the real highlight of this episode is watching Bill and Lou just act off each other. And also because it's bodybuilder focused, surely it was quite nostalgic for Lou, because he does his usual bodybuilder shtick and bodybuilder competition shtick. So probably just felt like, no pun intended, muscle memory at this point. And it kind of feels like a very abridged, like, bodybuilding inspirational movie, or like some nostalgia stuff for Pumping Iron. So I love it. It's very fun. It has that fun late 70s, early 80s aesthetic that's really fun and engaging and entertaining. And Lou gives a solid performance as Carl Molino. Yeah, I love this one. Next up is, coming in at number 3 is season 4, episode 11, East Winds. While living in the Chinatown part of San Francisco, a baffled David Barrett finds himself the unwilling recipient of a mail-order bride seeking something hidden in his apartment, dragging him and his landlady into a standoff between the Chinese mafia and a gruff beat cop. This one I also slept on for quite a while, but upon rewatching it, this one's quite captivating. This essentially is the Hulk mixed with a film noir, grungy, grimy cop film, and it's very entertaining. Watching this Chinese mafia, I think it's like a bunch of diamonds, but watching this undercover bride try to get these diamonds, dragging David Banner into this situation he wants nothing to do with. This cop who is in love with this mail order bride, trying to save her from her life and save her from this Chinese mafia, and then David hulking out. One section, he ingests pufferfish, which is really poisonous, and he hulks out in an attempt to try to shake off the effects of the pufferfish toxin. and then tearing apart a Chinese restaurant and fucking up a bunch of Chinese mafia goons. It's very entertaining, very captivating, and very well made. I've been saying that a lot throughout this video. Sorry. But yeah, I love it. It's entertaining and captivating overall, the whole series. But yeah, I love it. Alrighty, now, season 4, coming in at number 2 on this list, is the only two-parter of this entire series that I like. And these 2 episodes are my 2 favorite episodes of the entire show. Season 4, episode 12 and 13. The first, parts 1 and 2. After hearing a legend about another Hulk, David Barr searches in the town of Visaria for a Dr. Jeffrey Clive, the scientist who could have discovered an antidote for his condition. Instead, he meets the widow Elizabeth Collins, played by Lola Albright, the fiancée of Dr. Clive, who also meets Del Fry, played by Harry Towns, a bitter old man who had once been a Hulk and wants the power back. There's also guest stars Billy Green Bush as Sheriff Carl Decker. That's also a very unfortunate name. He'd made a couple appearances earlier on in the show. In the first, part 2, with David's unwitting aid, Fry uses the lab equipment to regain his Hulk power. But his bitter and aggressive personality makes the creature, played by Dick Durock, extremely dangerous. Then Elizabeth Collins worries about the situation of her employee, Del Fry, and David can only hope there's enough of David's cure, and David can only hope there's enough of Dr. Clive's cure left for both of them. McGee arrives thinking Fry is the Hulk he has been chasing, and chaos ensues. So, okay, there's a lot to talk about with these 2 episodes. Hold on 1 second before I do. Hold up. Okay. So when I was initially researching the show, there was a section on the Wikipedia page that was talking about special or super notable episodes. And these 2 were the ones that were the most talked about, and these 2 were the ones that I was the most intrigued by. And actually, so sorry, my nose. After I saw the pilot on Netflix with my cousin, a few months later, I would go to a friend of mine's place, still researching the show, and I had just researched these 2 episodes on Wikipedia. So I noticed that his name's Willie. He had Netflix at the time too. And I asked him, hey, do you mind if I watch a couple episodes of this? He was like, yeah, go right ahead. So I watched these 2 episodes on Netflix, and I was so fucking blown away. This is the highest of high peaks of this entire series. These are the 2 best episodes of the entire series. And frankly, I think they're some of the best episodes of any comic book show ever made, bar none. I fucking love these 2. So almost everything about these 2, I just think is top-notch early 80s sci-fi action show awesomeness. The setup, the backstory, the performances, the action is sort of basic, but I'll get to that in a minute. The concept, the premise, Everything about these two episodes is top notch. The performances are all really good. Bill Bixby probably gives his best performance, aside from maybe Married, but I'd still give it to this one of the entire series. The actor who plays Del Fry gives an awesome performance. So I've talked about this before, where I don't really think it's a thing nowadays where actors tell a story and they're just acting, but the way they act is so captivating. Like the Quint Jaws moment, like that's probably the biggest example of an actor who is just telling a story, but how they tell the story is so captivating. The actor who plays Dell in this episode does that in an awesome way. Him explaining how he became the Hulk. He was just simply trying to fix up his health with Dr. Clive, and how he tells it, how he describes the process of him turning into the Hulk. It has a lot of eerie similarities and commonalities to how David became the Hulk. And his performance, how he tells the story, is really, really solid. He paints a lot of pictures with just words. There's one moment too. So going back to David's performance, his best acting moment of the entire series, in my opinion. So in part 2, when Del transforms into Fry Hulk, as I'll call it, there's a vial of the antidote, which is stated to actually work, but there's only one vial left. So after tossing aside David, Fry Hulk picks up this syringe of antidote and throws it at David, and it shatters. And David looks at the shattered needle, and he has the Hulk eyes. He's not angry or outraged. He's emotionally devastated. He's like screaming, "No! No!" and bawling his eyes out and tears streaming down his face. And then he finally transforms into Lou, and Lou also has tears running down his face too. It's a great acting moment. It's honestly one of the best acting moments of any actor in any TV show, in my opinion. That should have won Bill Bixby an Emmy, in my opinion. And also the concept and premise. This is the only time in the entire series where Hulk actually fought something. And not only was it something, it was another Hulk. Now, some people have tried to debate on whether or not this character, Fry Hulk, is like an homage or inspired by Hulk's like arch rival, the Abomination. I don't think this was the case. I think more so, well, it kind of retains some similar like parallels between Hulk and Abomination. They're two characters unwittingly transformed into gamma powered superhumans, but that's about it. Although Fry Hulk does have a similar personality to the Abomination, where he's much more ruthless and cunning and vicious and savage. In these episodes, Fry Hulk actually does kill people, whereas Banner Hulk does not kill people at all. And two, this is the only time. What? Sorry. This is the only time where Hulk ever fights another Hulk. The fight itself is not amazing by any means. It still has to adhere to early 80s TV rules. Like, Lou doesn't punch Fry Hulk, really. He just kind of grabs him up by his shirt and tosses him around the lab and throws him into some panels and glass planes. But the fact that we have two Hulks fighting each other, it's just so cool. And also Dick DeRock, the guy who plays the transformed Fry Hulk, he would later go on. See, when did this episode air? March 6th, 1981. Oh, well, duh, of course. So in 1982, Dick Durock would later go on to play Swamp Thing in the first Wes Craven Swamp Thing film, and would go on to play Swamp Thing in its sequel, Return of Swamp Thing, and all 70 something episodes of the 90s Swamp Thing TV series. Dick Durock was a stuntman primarily. But yeah, his main claim to fame, especially in the superhero world, is playing Swamp Thing. So in a way, you're kind of seeing Hulk versus Swamp Thing in this episode. And yeah, like I said, the fight itself is not great, but just the fact that we see two Hulks fight is just so cool. And yeah, so this is the main reason I never finished the show initially back in 2014. I did try to watch the next episode after this, which was The Harder They Fall, but I was just like, man, you totally peaked. The show peaks with the first part 2, and after that, I still do think this to this day. After the first part 2, I hate to say it, but the show massively nosedives after that, because it started off pretty high, and then just kept climbing and climbing and climbing, and then with the first part 2, and then because the first parts 1 and 2 are so good and so entertaining and so well done. After that, the show never even came close to being as captivating as the first parts 1 and 2. I could watch the first parts 1 and 2 as their own individual thing anytime, any day. I love these 2 episodes. They're honestly some of my favorite TV show episodes of any television series I've ever seen in my entire life. I love it. Unfortunately, though, these 2 are so good that they kind of present something that I kind of have to talk about here, because this is recent. So, researching the show recently, like in the last couple weeks, I came to discover that Kenneth Johnson intentionally really downplayed a lot of the comic book aesthetic and comic book tropes. He wanted to make this show as realistic and believable as possible, which in some ways is admirable, and in some ways it is well done, and it does fit with this version of the Hulk. But at the same time, I just feel like, okay, come on, dude. You have a man who transforms into a 7-foot green skinned monster. Why not have a little bit more fun with the concept? And it kind of has a similar problem. It's not as bad, but it kind of reminds me of the George Reeves Superman series from, I think it was the 50s or 60s. Horror and Metal, tell me down below. Throughout the entirety of that series, you have Superman, who is Superman, but he spends the entire show just battling gangsters. It's kind of lame. As after a while, it just feels redundant and repetitive, because Superman is never going to have a challenge. Superman is never going to go up against something that can actually have him use his super abilities for more than just the snap of a finger. And this being the only time that the Hulk ever fights something that can rival him in terms of strength and power, it's really cool, but it's a huge missed opportunity. So I think they should have done one of two things. And since this was done by the same guy who did the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, both of those shows have the title characters go up against Bigfoot robots. But because they themselves are cyborgs, those feel like proper challenges for them to actually use their bionic strength to actually tear something apart and get into a full-on fisticuffs brawl. This is the same thing with Hulk and Fry Hulk in this episode. So they should have done either A, introduce maybe a couple robots for the Hulk to go up against to actually give Hulk something to tear apart and fight. Like even if it was like a construction robot, an experimental construction robot that was like really durable and really strong, but it has a faulty AI and it goes out of control. I mean, hell, that could have been cool in and of itself. Or to keep going with the parallels between Fry and Banner, Fry actually, because at the end of the first parts 1 and 2, Fry is just gunned down as the Hulk. Right as Fry and Banner are about to keep fighting, the sheriff shows up and shoots him 3 times with a revolver, dead. It's kind of lame and anticlimactic, unfortunately. Like maybe if the sheriff used a shotgun, that would have been a little more acceptable, but to just take down Fry Hulk, I mean, they do state that Fry Hulk is weaker than Banner Hulk, but he still has the same abilities and the same powers. So why is he able to be brought down with 3 bullets from a revolver? At least a shotgun would have made a little bit more sense. But I think they should have had Fry survive, and as like a dark parallel to Banner, he too goes around the world and is like just staying out of the public eye, but he's using his Hulk abilities to kill people that fuck with him when he's on the run, and he's using his Hulk abilities to evade the law. And then they could have, like, because at this point the show was getting pretty repetitive, so what they could have done to spice up the rest of the series is that Banner now has a new mission while still running from the law and while still running away from Jack McGee. He goes on a mission to hunt down Fry Hulk to either try to fight him, convince him to turn himself in, or hell, even kill him. Which that could also be another parallel between Dr. Frankenstein and the Frankenstein monster. But no. Fry Hulk dies. I still love these 2 episodes, but it's just kind of a shame that there was no other superpowered enemies for Hulk to go up against. It was just back to the status quo after this. And unfortunately, for something like this, you can't go back to the same status quo. Maybe you could, kind of like what they do with The Fugitive, another comparison, is like what I said, have Fry become a recurring villain for the rest of the show, like how the One-Armed Man was a recurring villain throughout The Fugitive. You could have sparse appearances throughout the series, sure, just like what they did with The Fugitive, but yeah, it's just a huge, huge shame and a huge missed opportunity that Fry did not become a recurring villain. So as I stated, after this peak of the show, I just could not really get back into it after that. And it was also around this time that I had kind of reached my limit with watching this show. I was like, okay, I've watched 3.5 seasons of this for like the last year and a half. I'm good. I'm done for a while. But it wasn't until, like I said, Roman was born when I finally finished the series. Now, the rest of season 4, there were some decent episodes. Like The Harder They Fall actually did turn out to be a pretty decent episode. Paralyzed from the waist down after an auto accident, a torn David Blackwell must weigh up accepting life in a wheelchair or whether to risk intentionally transforming into the Hulk, whose incredible regenerative abilities may repair the damage, which of course it does. And it is an engaging episode, but like I said, it just was not as good as the first parts 1 and 2. Yeah, after that, the rest of season 4 was just kind of standard. Although the episode Danny was a really solid one too. That's where David tries to help a young widow and her baby get away from a living with a criminal hick brother-in-law. But going into season 5, this is the shortest season of the entire series and only had a measly 7 episodes. And I don't know if it's because season 5 sucked, that's why the show was canceled, or if because the show had just run its course and people had moved on to other things. But yeah, season 5 was cut short after only 7 episodes. I don't know how long season 5 was initially supposed to be. Actually, let me see if I can look it up real quick. Um Oh, I guess some people, some sources speculate that season 5 was just overflow from season 4, which had a truncated episode list due to the 1981 writer's strike. Which, yeah, season 4 had a episode count. Well, I wouldn't say it was truncated. It was 18 episodes. That's a decent length for a TV season, especially back then. Let's see. I guess they don't really say. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they had at least like another 15 to 20 episode run in mind for season 5. But yeah, the show was axed after only 7. But there's one episode. So rewatching this, I was just really kind of not digging it. I could kind of see the writing on the wall that the show is about to end. But there's one episode of season 5 that I would consider to be one of my favorites. It's kind of low on this list, but season 5, episode 2, Two Godmothers. A special delivery makes for an amazing escape when laundry truck driver David Bradley is forced to help 3 prisoners from a women's prison, including one who is 9 months pregnant. Now, this episode, again, the Hulk outside of things, like I only remember one moment from the Hulk out moments, and it led into the most memorable part of this episode. It's when Hulk is trying to save some people from like an avalanche, but Hulk gets his hand trapped and crushed under a big boulder, and at one point he punches this boulder and it fucking explodes. But as a result, his hand is all fucked up and mangled. And when he transforms back into David, it's healed somewhat, but it's still mangled. But the most memorable moment of this episode is when David returns to these 3 prisoners who are held up in some kind of cabin. The one who's pregnant is in labor, and a one-handed David has to coach the other 2 female prisoners, one of which is a pretty unscrupulous woman, into helping deliver this baby. And there's one moment where the baby is coming out feet first, and that's a big no-no. Whenever that happens, unfortunately, the baby has to be pushed back up inside the uterus and turned around inside the uterus some fucking how. I don't know how the hell that works. But yeah, they don't really show anything, but you can kind of hear some sound effects. But just the idea of a one-handed doctor using two escaped prisoners trying to do this very dangerous and very risky procedure on a pregnant woman, and also was kind of fucking with me at the time because my son was just born weeks prior or days prior when I saw this. And I was like, oh my God. And like, can I never fucking escape this? Because I've told the story of how Roman's birth was quite difficult. But I was just like, God damn. Breech baby. That's what it's called. Yeah, thank you. When the babies are born foot first, that's called breeched. And yeah, that's a big no-no. When they come out like that, you can't pull them, otherwise they'll get like baby neck syndrome, where they can end up having a broken neck, or like broken blood vessels, which could lead to death for a baby. That's why there's the term shaken baby syndrome. That's a no-no. Big, big, big no-no. Because the muscles and ligaments in a baby's neck when they're that young are too weak, so they get whiplash, and a baby could full on break their neck if they get shaken like that. Yeah, Two Godmothers, solid episode. There's another couple episodes of season 5 that were decent too, namely Triangle, season 5, episode 5, and A Minor Problem. I'll actually give this one, even though the series kind of ends abruptly, this does sort of fit as a finale for the show. David Bradshaw is in a race against time when he arrives in Rock Springs, an eerily deserted town that has been contaminated by a deadly bacterium. When he is also infected, David must find an antidote to cure himself and everyone in Rock Springs. This is the final episode in which Charles Napier voiced the Hulk. This one's pretty tense and kind of creepy at times. It feels like another kind of disaster / like infected / contagion film mixed with the Incredible Hulk. So that's pretty entertaining. But then after the show's cancellation, it was followed up in 1988, May 22nd, with the first of 3 Incredible Hulk telefilms. The Incredible Hulk Returns. May 7th, 1989, had The Trial of the Incredible Hulk. And in February 18th, 1990, we would have the finale for this entire franchise, The Death of the Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk Returns is a pretty entertaining movie. It's my favorite of the 3. Something weird about the first 2 of these 3 movies is that they were intended to be backdoor pilots for other Marvel superhero shows. The Incredible Hulk Returns was supposed to be a Thor show, which was the first time that Hulk and Thor ever teamed up on screen. And this also was the first time where the Hulk was voiced by Lou Ferrigno himself. This one's pretty solid. It feels like a fun late 80s comic book movie, just on TV, but still it's entertaining enough. It's got some fun action. There's a decent amount of Hulk action, and Hulk theming up with the late 80s Thor is campy and cheesy and entertaining. The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, I was really interested in this one, but upon seeing it, it's kind of disappointing. This was supposed to be a backdoor pilot for a Daredevil TV series, but this never came to be. The Thor show obviously never came to be either. This one does not have Hulk teaming up with Daredevil. They actually don't really share any screen time except one moment when Hulk saves Daredevil from an assault on his hearing by Wilson Fisk. Very disappointing Kingpin, by the way. And it has a very disappointing ending with piss poor special effects. It has a couple decent Hulk out moments and is also notable for 2 things. One, this actually did influence some of the early episodes of the Netflix Daredevil series, because in this series, Daredevil is just a guy in black clothing with a black bandana and black covering over his eyes. This is how Daredevil would look in the early episodes of the Daredevil TV series. And it's also notable because this was the very first Marvel movie of any kind where Stan Lee had some kind of cameo. He was one of the jury members in a dream sequence where Hulk actually is put on trial and he hulks out and destroys a courtroom. And then finally, with Death of the Incredible Hulk, Trial and Death were both directed by Bill Bixby. I actually have never seen The Death of the Incredible Hulk, but I have absolutely no desire to do so because I know how it ends. Not just because my favorite character dies, although that certainly is a factor. It's how he dies that I think is so lame. So throughout the entire series, the Hulk has gone through a crap ton of damage and gone through a bunch of shit that's fucked him up, and he's come back and just kept on going. He's destroyed numerous buildings and vehicles and machines and contraptions and what have you. But how the Hulk dies, he simply falls from a helicopter and splats on the ground. I think he's like 200 feet in the air, and he just falls and transforms back to David Banner and dies. It's so lame and so disappointing. I call bullshit. We've seen Hulk like jump down from similar heights. Hell, even in the Incredible Hulk Returns, we see him jump from like 80 feet up in the air and he lands on his feet and he just keeps going, no problem. But he falls from a helicopter and splats and dies. Nah, miss me with that shit. Miss me the fuck with that shit. And it's all the more disappointing, too, because this was not intended to be the finale for the series. There was supposed to be a fourth film titled The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk, which would have had David actually survive this encounter, and he somehow successfully cures himself of the Hulk. But due to some kind of military experiment gone wrong, or some kind of coup de grace or something gone wrong, David actually has to recreate the experiment that transformed him into the Hulk in the first place and regain his Hulk abilities. And they also would have had Hulk actually speak in this movie. But this never came to be, unfortunately, because in 1993, Bill Bixby passed away at the age of only 59 due to prostate cancer. And obviously, this put an end to any kind of Hulk plans because Lou Ferrigno was such good friends with Bill. If he tried to replace Bill, Lou probably would have had no part of it whatsoever. So the series ends on such a downer note and on a very bittersweet note because it's a shame that Bill died because that movie does sound kind of cool. But yeah, it's just such a shame that this series ends on such a lame, bittersweet, and unsatisfying note. But regardless, god damn. The Incredible Hulk still remains as one of my all-time favorite TV shows ever made. And so to quickly go through my favorite episodes, The Beast Within, 747, Never Give a Trucker an Even Break, Life and Death, Earthquakes Happen, Married, Ricky, Rainbow's End, Another Path, Like a Brother, Haunted, The Slam, Homecoming, The Snare, Equinox, Bring Me the Head of the Hulk, King of the Beach, East Winds, the first parts 1 and 2, which are my two favorite episodes of the entire series, and Two Godmothers. Those are the ones I recommend the most. So that'll do it. Apologies if this top 20 list is too different from what I usually do. I'm not going to do every top 20 or top 10 or 15 list like this from now on. I just wanted to do something different, and I wanted to both do a top 20 but also do like a review slash retrospective of one of my favorite TV shows. So I thought it'd be nice to combine them in one. Thank you to all those who have watched and listened to me for almost 3 hours. I think this is the longest video I've ever done by myself. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with your friends. Please bear with my very inconsistent video schedule, but I think with this location, I think I might be able to get back to being consistent. And apologies for all the interruptions from Roman and my trip to nature. Push the comments down below. And what are your favorite episodes down in the comments? Let me know, please. Look forward to my next video. And as always, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. And I will see you guys in the next episode.